Welcome to the Balanced Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Matt Southam. Here, we delve into candid conversations with entrepreneurs, exploring both their business journey and their secrets to maintaining mental well-being. As we navigate the balance of ambition and inner peace, I hope you find insights, inspiration, and invaluable takeaways in every episode. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Daniel. Welcome to the show today. I want to start by asking, can you provide a bit of context to your life? Tell me about your background.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Happy to be here and looking forward to the chat. So by way of background, I'm from England. I have had quite an international journey, but I'm from Manchester originally. Proud northern roots. Proud Manchester roots. A lot of great advancements in technology and the world happened in the city, which I could ramble on about. But from Manchester, I went to Oxford University to do French and German. I just enjoyed languages, which I think probably was the starting of that international journey. I did a couple of French and German exchanges, which were as weird and as amazing as they always are. But it gave me that bit of global appetite and enjoyed languages. So I went to do French and German at Oxford with a year abroad as part of that in France and Germany. And Oxford, of course, has a great name. It's a wonderful place. So I was very fortunate to study there. But I remember everybody saying to me, and this is a few years back, but everybody saying, wow, the world's your oyster. You went to Oxford, you study languages, you speak French and German, you're automatically going to jump into a great job. And as I graduated, everybody else, my sort of peers at university, were all going into management consulting, law, finance, banking, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. And it just never happened to me. I don't know why. I didn't dive into anything. I think I'd done that extra year, so I was a little bit behind in that sense. And I wouldn't say panic, but a few months afterwards, everyone starts asking questions to you. And I think there's a lot of pressure on people at a very early age to jump into the perfect career. And of course, that first career makes a really big difference because it can set you on a whole trajectory. And sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you might not get it right. And the world has changed a bit. You can jump between jobs. And I obviously do a lot in this graduate recruitment market, so it's very personal to me. But I always tell people not to panic. At 22 years old, you don't have to know everything or have your journey decided. So my journey took me on a different way. I think I used that panic or lack of plan or direction to my advantage in some ways. And I went and taught in China. I just saw a job advert in the career service that said, teach English in China. And the description was, it's not a very pretty city. It's quite industrial and a bit gritty. And I thought, okay, well, I know that.
Sign me up.
Sign me up. And I went out there on a whim. All I knew was that Mr. Wong was going to meet me at the airport. And to be fair, he did. And he had my name on, and we drove 5 hours through these very gritty towns in industrial north of China. And I spent 6 months teaching in China, which was fantastic. It gave me another international perspective. I encourage anybody, by the way, if you're young enough and hungry enough to go out and teach English overseas, it's a way of getting paid to spend time overseas. And if you're a native English speaker, you're very fortunate. It's a huge privilege to have that, but you can get paid to teach. So it's a great thing to do. So I did that. I then did a master's degree studying Chinese and management. And I set up my first business, which was to help other young people who didn't know what they wanted to do in life to go and get work experience in China. And that was my first entrepreneurial journey. I could take you down that journey, what happened afterwards, but it did set me up on a whole 15-year journey to age myself a little bit of running businesses that help young people to get connected to the workplace, get work experience, and to do it either domestically in their home country or to do it internationally with countries overseas. So that's a little bit of the background that has led me to where I am today.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there the experience and work, and from education into work. There often is a disconnect, or a disconnect's maybe an unfair word, but theory into practice, and actually the workplace can be very different from what it says in the textbook. So by getting experiences, I guess that helps. Sometimes even know what you want to do, because again, on paper, you think actually that's the job I want, and maybe it isn't, but you don't know until you've had that experience.
You're absolutely right, Matt. It's as much finding out what you want to do as much as what you don't want to do. And again, that first job can be so critical, or those first one or two experiences can really set the tone of where you end up. And I think it's really important, A, again, that people don't panic, and B, that people try before you buy. You put so much effort into buying the smallest of items, and yet making a choice as critical as your career. People tend to just sort of fall into it or jump into it sometimes. And I don't think our education system is brilliantly set up to support young people entering the workforce. I think that's a lot of the work that we do is working with universities and other education institutes and governments as well, to try and help young people to get some work experience, especially nowadays that the job market is moving so quickly with technology, etc. So I think it's really critical that we help to guide those universities, because a career service, they're limited in resources. It might be people who've been there for 30 years or something who are doing a fantastic job, but might have lost touch a little bit with the workplace. And so I think it's just really important that people do get that opportunity to try something out. And my friends who went into those other jobs, by the way, did just fine too. They've done really well in life, but my path has been quite different, and it has taken me on this journey that ended up, I did end up spending 7 years in China and Vietnam and 7 years in America, and I'm building businesses and running my own businesses. So it did, for better or for worse, and there are definitely pros and cons of being an entrepreneur and a founder and CEO and all of that stuff. But it did set me off on a different track, and overall, I've really enjoyed it, and in many ways, it's been a privilege. So even though I was a little later than everybody else, I do want others to realize that you don't need to rush into something.
No, I mean, I think sometimes those timescales are actually maybe forced upon us when it doesn't actually line up. I mean, if you look at, take right back to baby stage, like everyone learns to walk at a different time and everyone learns different things at a different time. Yet when it's picking at something as big as your career, it's almost based around the 12 months that you're born in relates to what school year that you end up in, and therefore you're making a decision then. And in fact, I mean, I've got a daughter, she's born 21st of August. She's literally the youngest in her class. Compared to other people who are born in September, she's almost a year behind.
Wow.
Yet both expected to make that decision or take exams and then make a decision on what they're doing at the same time. And for a lot of us, we're maybe not ready. We just don't really know. I mean, certainly I found that for me, my early 20s, I wouldn't say drifted between jobs, but I was always not quite sure what I was doing. And I ended up a couple of years abroad following a bit of a passion as well. But it was just, I didn't really know. Nothing had connected. And perhaps it was, maybe I didn't realize what job I actually wanted to be in because I hadn't had that experience.
You're so right. And society puts all of these pressures on us in many ways. It's really interesting you bring up like the walking, and the same with talking as well with kids. I'm also a dad of two little kids, and I remember, like if they're not speaking a few words at a certain age, everyone starts panicking and asking questions. And like the poor kids, like one year and 3 months, like let him be. And the same with walking. And you know what? They're just fine now. Like they're absolutely great, and now you can't shut them up sometimes. So like I think there is too much pressure, and I'm also I'm the manager or co-manager of my son's under-7s football team, still 6-year-olds. So like, first of all, they have pressure, but it's interesting what you said about your daughter being the last in the year. I found something out by being the manager that a lot of the academies, the football academies, if you look at the dates of birthdays of the players who get into the academies, is a huge disproportion of those who are born in those months of September to December, because they're physically bigger. And at that age, just being like an inch taller and a bit stronger makes a huge impact. And so there's a disproportionate amount of football players who were born in those months, which I never realized. So I think society does put these pressures on us. We have to live with that. Unfortunately, it is part of the society we live in, but let's try to do our bit in encouraging others not to worry so much, to relax. They're going to sort it out, and they may end up just that little bit happier in the end as well.
Yeah. I mean, talking about gaining experience in workplace, and you talk about careers and things like that. Obviously, we've seen a massive shift, first of all, in the way people work. So sometimes gaining experiences can be different rather than a big office with 20 people in. In fact, only a few of them are in a couple of times a week. Or, in fact, the whole business is a work from home. And therefore, it makes it trickier for someone to get real, there and then. But also, we are very international. I think people forget, actually, we've all got a lot in common, and a lot of companies actually have bases in different parts of the world and things like that. And I understand you sort of facilitate a little bit of that, being able to get experience when you're not actually stood physically in the office.
That's exactly right. So for background, I set up this first company, which was to send students or young people in person to get work experience. Originally in China. I wanted other people to go to China like I had. And then we opened up offices in Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, and India. And we helped young people, a lot of Brits, a lot of Americans, to go and get work experience in those countries for 2 or 3 months, which was fantastic. And then in 2018, pre-COVID, I set up Virtual Internships, which is the company that I run today. It was the same idea. It was two things. I wanted, again, young people to get work experience before they went off on their career journey. Where possible, get international work experience. But I realized that not everybody had the time or funds or visas or whatever to mean that they could go for 2 or 3 months in person to Tokyo, understandably. But the world has changed, or was changing so much, that we can now do this virtually and remotely. And that was pre-COVID. And then obviously everything accelerated even more than we hypothesized with COVID, and everybody had to go remote. And we'd been there saying, guys, for 2 years, we've been building this model for the remote world, because I've always felt we're going to end up in this world, and we are in it. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to always be remote or everyone will be remote, but it does mean that a lot of people are going to be doing hybrid roles, part-time remote, part-time in the office. Some will be fully remote, some will be fully in the office, but we're going to end up in a mixture of all of the above. And there are pros and cons to it, but the reality is it's going to happen, because it makes a lot of commercial sense that companies don't always want big offices, and they want to have, like you said, talent and people working from other countries. And I think it's important, or at least very helpful, to build up those skills of the remote workplace. And I think it's things like the ambiguity of work. It's communicating, building up a network remotely and virtually. And people often ask me, but can you really build relationships online rather than in the workplace? Don't you miss that little bit of workplace interaction? And I think it's just different. I mean, for full disclosure, me and you, Matt, we've never met before.
No.
But you can build up a chat. You can end up getting on quite well. And then, actually it's a contact, an acquaintance, or even a friend. And I think actually young people are probably more used to this, because they actually live more online for social media and games like Fortnite, which my kids haven't quite got into yet, but my nephew plays, and these are kids playing with other people around the world. So even maybe in those early years, they'll be building those skills. But I think it's really useful skills, and it opens up more jobs for young Brits, and opens up more jobs for people around the world as well to work with British companies. So overall, I think it's fantastic, actually. And I'm a big advocate of the opportunity that remote work is giving to us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a home worker. We used to have a town centre office. We're now all remote. But in fact, this afternoon, I'm going off to meet the team. We're getting together in a coffee shop, do a bit of internal strategizing and things like that. And it's great because we still have a bit of that in person. But one thing that I've noticed is a local secondary school, we used to have someone for work experience Monday to Friday for a week, every June, I think it was. We're not doing that this year. I haven't been able to commit to it, because most of us are working from home. In fact, the hours are a little bit flexible. So commercially, it makes sense. I'm not paying out for a town centre office, but I do know that there is a young person of 15 who isn't going to get a real life experience of what a local marketing agency does. And there's that slight bit about it that does pain me, because I'm a big advocate. I've worked a long while ago, worked with charities, with young people, teaching them video skills and things like that. And I've seen that actually that environment can really propel a young person forward and just show them actually there are some opportunities here regardless of, maths, English and science, great exams, you've got to do them. But actually, you want a creative field, okay, there are actually opportunities within that. So, yeah, it is a tricky situation, certainly for some of the smaller companies like myself to be able to, offer those things. But
yeah. Well, that's it where we come in, Matt. That's the business we created. It's as much for the companies because we interviewed our companies. We have 15,000 companies that work with us to provide these internship opportunities, and we asked them what are the main drivers for it. And the two leading reasons are very, very clear. One is a talent pipeline. They want to find great young people and maybe go on to employ them. And the second is exactly what you said. So I really appreciate it. Is giving back. Like a lot of people as individuals and as companies want to give back because they're paying it forward. Maybe they had a chance at 16 years old to get work experience and they want to give it back. And if we can't all do it in person, then maybe this remote way is a good way of doing it. And it does save on like a few things, you don't have to commute into the office and you can do a bit of work from home and stuff like that. So there can be a bit of a cost saving at times as well. But I do think, like you said, like those creative skills, as much as school and university or college is great, there are certain things you just learn on the job. And I think like there is a big, like we said, disconnect. There is a big difference between studying from a textbook and being with people who've been in the industry for an amount of time. So we need to make sure that still happens, even as the sort of job market or the remote market changes. We all need to group together and make sure it still happens.
Yeah, one of the biggest sort of, I say, soft skills I find can be lacking isn't the delivery of the work. It's the delivery of the communication to the client. It's understanding what they're saying, how you communicate this back and forth, and just because sometimes I work in the creative industry, what the client says and what they actually want, and you're trying to interpret it and things like that. You can teach the delivery of the work, but actually that's only a small part of managing a client and working with another business and building up that relationship. I mean, exactly the same as us. We're having this conversation today. Actually, we're able, while we're online, we can see each other. We're seeing each other's reactions. You learn stuff. Whereas if I was to teach someone how to have a conversation like this, it depends what the other person says back. Yeah, but what's the actual emotion? You start to pick these things up, and that's what happens when you're in a real life situation.
So true, Matt. So we focus a lot on soft skills as well. You picked up on a really key point. It's not just the technical skills. You can be absolutely brilliant on web development or digital marketing or something, but you also need those soft skills, and so they're really hard to acquire before you're actually in the workplace. So we think of things like leadership and communication skills and teamwork, etc. I think back a little bit to my first job when I just come out of uni. It was a job manager. Even things like I had so little understanding of the workplace that I turned up in like a very formal suit and tie into a very laid back office, and it just showed the disconnect. Yeah, I had no idea that this was just normal human beings that were just a bit older than me with graying beards and less hair. But like, I didn't realize they were just normal people, and I was so formal. And now I feel a bit like uncomfortable thinking back to it. But like, God bless a young 16 to 20-year-old who just doesn't know that world yet because they've not had that experience. So soft skills are really important, and some of it's just really natural. Like, you just try to enjoy it a little bit. That's really easy to say, isn't it, when you've sort of reached a certain age and you're more comfortable in yourself. But you just want younger people to be able to feel comfortable and enjoy the workplace and enjoy other people. Most people are pretty good.
There's a thing funny enough, I've been doing a post this morning, did a little video, and it was saying, when creating content for social media, I was basically saying you're never going to be the best at everything, but the thing you're best at is being you. Because no one can be better at being you than you. So as long as you're literally the best version. And of course, the way we behave is slightly different, whether it's work, whether I'm seeing my mum and dad, whether I'm watching football with the lads in the pub. There's different versions of us, but actually the core person, as long as you're you, actually that's the most important part. And like you say, it's very easy to get caught up into thinking someone who's 20 years older in their workplace, you've got to try and impress them by working a different way, changing you, dressing a certain way. Actually, we're all just trying to reach the same thing, and they've got the same concerns and the same issues as you.
I couldn't agree more, Matt. I couldn't agree more. And it's a very dark place, to be honest. If you're comparing yourself to others and you're trying to beat others and compete with others, you're never going to win that game. The only thing that you can do, I first of all totally agree, is be yourself and try to beat yourself a little bit. Try to grow 1% every month on yourself. Yeah. Growing yourself, of course, is important, but growing yourself to beat others is never. You're never going to win. Because there'll always be someone different or better in your opinion or good at this. Like, you can only focus on your skills. It's a much more enjoyable place as well to just be yourself. And if you think that's not good enough, then maybe you're in the wrong place or the wrong industry or the wrong office. And that's okay as well. You know, there's somewhere for everybody. And I think attitude is really important as well. Like, even if you're not the best in class, if you're trying, like, even as I employ people, you know, some people are just technically brilliant and their ability is just fantastic. But other people, their ability isn't there, but you can see the work ethic or the commitment or the integrity or loyalty or honesty. They matter just as much. Attitude is so key as well. So, yeah. I think we're on the page.
Yeah, quite often, you know, skill actually isn't enough to get you to the top. It's actually there's that determination, the work ethic, the turning up, the keep going. That is actually one of the key skills. And I guess, you know, that's true for entrepreneurs, because most of the time our journeys are a bit bumpy, you know, but actually turning up and keeping going is much more important than having that initial bit of skill that allowed you to start up the business. And I see this a lot. You know, people start up business and I can't remember the stat, but the majority of businesses fail within the first year and even more within the first 5. And it's either that they might have been very good at the job, but like you say, they haven't been taught. People don't have the skills in leadership, know how to actually run a business, pay their taxes, employ people, manage people, lead people. It's there. Or equally, it's just hard. They haven't been able to turn up every single day and face those knockbacks. I mean, how's your journey been?
Well, all of the above, to be honest. I think I think 90% of startups fail in the first year is the statistic. I mean, it's a damning statistic. Yeah. So if you're still going, you're the 10%, and, you know, kudos. And if you haven't, you know, get yourself back up again and don't be too downhearted. The odds were against you from the very start. Yeah. And yeah, look, my journey has been as challenging and as bumpy as anybody's. You know, you post on LinkedIn or Facebook the good stuff. You don't post on LinkedIn the bad stuff. It's a hard journey. It takes a lot of resilience, to be honest. Like, we talk about this word a lot in my company. We say a few things. We say we always find a way. And we talk about resilience, and teamwork's really important, because you need other people with you. Like, I can come on to that as well. But resilience is massive. So where do you draw that resilience from? I think I always ask other founders about founder DNA. What is it in their childhood that has made them driven or has pushed them to this, or in those dark moments, what is it in childhood that has really made them fight hard? And it's fascinating. You always get a childhood journey from everybody. So I think those early years are really formative. Whether it could be a variety of things. It could be family related, friends related. You could have been on a sports team and you were just that captain, or that Roy Keane, still my favorite player. That was your idol. But there's always something in founder DNA. And I think resilience is massive. And in terms of my own journey, yeah, look, I ran a travel company to China in COVID. I mean, if there's a worse business to have, it's hard to imagine it.
We can almost laugh about it now, but saying it, I mean, that must just have been, awful.
It was bleak. I mean, I'd just moved to Vietnam. Business was going really well. We had like 1,000 young people going to Asia, mainly to China, which was our biggest program. And then suddenly I start reading the news and talking to colleagues saying, this looks a bit bad. We're like, it'll be okay, it'll be fine. Then like a week later, it's like, this is not looking great. So then, you know, I was having to communicate. This is where communication comes in. I had 100 people in my team that I was communicating to, and I had hundreds of clients that we had to communicate to. And getting that communication piece is so important. Mm-hmm. And we started thinking, okay, China's not looking good. Let's move the people who are coming, let's move them to Japan and South Korea. And then a week later, it was like Tokyo now has cases, and then Korea did. And then we actually we sometimes you have to pivot. Our pivot was, the next step was to send people to the UK for these programs. It's not quite Asia, but we can still build this. And then the UK got COVID. And then we realized we'd already built this other organization that was more focused in the virtual world. And actually there's an opportunity to pivot. It took a huge amount of resilience, huge amount of communication, all of those soft skills, and then teamwork as well. You can't do everything on your own. So obviously when you're an early founder and it's just you, that's tough. And it's a lone journey. But, I called upon brilliant colleagues. And I think that's where the being you bit comes in, and the integrity bit and business ethics and all of those things that have led you to where you are. They really shine through, because you look around the room and you look at other people and you've developed these relationships in good times and bad, and then they're there in bad times with you as well. And I was very blessed that in those very dark days of pivoting, I looked at my management team and they had my back, I had their back. And, that's where teamwork and interpersonal relationships are so important. I feel very blessed. But in some ways you create that yourselves as well. But I feel very blessed. I still have the same management team I've had for a long time. We're work colleagues 80%, but we're friends as well. Like I like it really makes a difference when you like the people you work with. So that's been very beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I talk quite a lot about personal brand and things like that. And actually, that's one of those almost like soft management skills that allows you that when times are tough or you're pivoting, to actually lean on, because it's still you. Yeah. And people will come with you on that journey and pivot with you and believe in you, because actually you're authentic and you turn up and you do what you say you're going to do, and you've proved that you do.
That's where the back to your point earlier about being yourself, that's where authenticity comes in. You can't pretend something for years. Like, you are who you are. If that's not good enough, then so be it. And if it is, then that's great. And I think it's also where integrity comes in. Like, there's a lot of pressure on people in business. I don't know if you've watched The Dropout. I was watching it recently. The lady Elizabeth Holmes, who set up Theranos and took on all these billions of dollars of investment in Silicon Valley for this new health product, but was really sadly being fraudulent because the pressure was so much on her that she felt she had to produce results, etc. And nowadays I have a board as well, so we took investors ourselves. So I have to report to a board, and there is pressure. They're excited, they come on board, and they want to see great results. And I think transparency and honesty and integrity really matters. Whether it's reporting to a board, or whether it's with your clients or customers, or whether it's with your teammates. It really matters. And if you show integrity and honesty and transparency, people will join you for the journey, because people are realistic. We know people prefer knowing the truth than feeling that the wool's being pulled over their eyes. So I think authenticity, transparency, integrity, honesty, loyalty, all of these things are just, again, those really hard things to train. And often it's watching a manager who has those assets, but I think they really can be a divider between people who will go on to do great things and those who might not.
Yeah, I mean, you see it, don't you? Because actually 15 years or 10 years, 20 years, it's actually a short amount of time, because I know that I've picked up work from people who I knew before I was even doing this. 15 years ago, we were working in different jobs and things like that. But because, the product I'm delivering is different, but actually it's still me delivering it. Actually, I'm still building those relationships, and people are coming to me for that, because we still like people. People like people.
It matters. It really matters. And you're right. You build up a network, and again, if you're your authentic self and always out with integrity, you can go back to somebody 5 years later and say, "Hey, I'm doing this," and they like you. They're not, there's a million products that people can choose from, and the difference is very marginal. It's not even just always a price basis. That's a race to the bottom if you're just fighting on price. It's often those interpersonal relationships. Like, I like working with Matt. He's a really good guy. I know he'll give his best, and I know I can trust him. And I'd rather pay 5-10% extra because I know that I'm going to enjoy this working relationship. That really matters.
Yeah. So, I mean, I always say, businesses sell products and services, but it's the brands that are the reason you choose them.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's a business brand or a personal brand. And actually, we're seeing it more and more now that actually founders, their brand transfers straight over to the company they're running and things like that. So it is about the brand. That's why we choose what we do. Because, yeah, like you say, it's not quite often not about price. We don't buy rationally anyway. We buy emotionally. So actually, the price almost isn't part of it. Obviously, I mean, within reason, I always try and make it clear that sometimes in this podcast, I'm talking black and white scenarios or making a statement, but quite often, a supplier that I might have, actually, I know them, they've served me for years. Someone else could phone up tomorrow and offer me something else and it's half the price. But no, I'm all right, actually. This person was brilliant when something went wrong and I'm okay. So doing that and being authentic throughout actually keeps your business going in the long run.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I think it's the same with investors as well. The investors, they're interested in the product and the vision, and you're going to show them these amazing charts of hundreds of millions of dollars in the future. But really, they're investing into you and your team because they're savvy enough and experienced enough to know that even with the best ideas, if you have the wrong team and the wrong people, it's not gonna work. So I think it all leads back to those same things that we seem clearly aligned on, which is people. And people being so important. And actually, as a company, we're always doing a temperature check on the 3 Ps, people, process, and product. We always want to make sure that our product, we feel, is a good product that is providing a good service, customers are happy, etc. Process is important, making sure things are done as efficiently as possible. And we've got great people in our team. And then people, and we're always rating them and giving them a grade. And you need the 3 Ps to be operating and functioning together.
I love that. That's such a great way of looking at it. I really, really like that. And talking about people, how have you installed, that culture throughout the team? You said at one point there was sort of 100 odd people, in your team. How do you install that culture in them?
Yeah, culture is so important. I can't remember who said it, but the culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
And it's often what happens in the workplace when you're not around as the manager. I think it's leading from the front. I mean, we have a whole culture deck, by the way. We've sort of copied the Silicon Valley approach. I think it was Netflix who first produced the culture deck, and everybody who comes in actually has to go through that. And we have our cultural sayings in the company, and we talk a lot about these things, and we do instill it in a way. We make sure everybody reads the culture deck before they join the company. So in the interview process, we have a whole 2 pages in there about why not to join virtual internships. And it's true. Like, we're really fast paced. There's a lot of autonomy. Sometimes structure may not be as strong as other places that you could be at it, and stuff like that. Like, we want to be really honest about what our culture is, and I think and some people love it. They're like, this is fantastic, and others, it's not for them, and that's really important. So I think it's leading from the front. I think it's communicating clearly and effectively. Obviously, having these culture decks and these statements with what our culture stands for helps as well. We do it in all of our appraisals. It sort of aligns with the different culture ideas that we have in the company. We do because we're a remote first company, so we're all working remotely. We do monthly, we call them town halls, where we're all speaking. We do teamwork sessions in them as well. But I think a lot of it does stem from management, and it's hiring the right people and instilling the same values that you really care about, and leading from the front with those values. And we find that we have really strong retention rate as a result of it. And I think, again, sort of saying the same thing in some ways, but it leads back to that authenticity side. Mm-hmm. People want to trust in you as a leader, and you can only do that with integrity and human decency, with some vision. And strategy as well. You want people obviously to feel on board with the strategy. I think it helps that we're a mission-driven company. I think all the best companies have a mission, and it doesn't mean we're quite fortunate. We're connecting young people around the world with businesses around the world. So in its very self, it's a mission-driven company. But any company can have a strong mission. It's about the leaders and the team making it clear what that mission statement is. Why it's impactful and why it's going to impact other people. Everybody can have that, and I think that really matters to people, especially young people today, who I think are quite mission driven. Actually, probably even more than our generation. I'm saying, I don't know how old you are.
No,
probably like that. Like this generation, I think, is even more aware, sustainability wise, environment wise, mission wise, etc. So I think it's really valuable in the sort of human decency side, but actually from a business perspective as well, in terms of bringing people on board, encouraging them, and staff retention.
Yeah, I mean, completely. And we have seen that generational change. I'm early 40s at the moment. Well, 44. Can I say early 40s? I mean, is
Still
that
early.
mid? Yeah, still early. I'm
Very
going with early. late 30s, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But, have seen that, almost, my parents' generation, very often people got a job and that was it. And that was the company they worked at. Now, I don't know the stat off the top of my head, but it's high. People have, by the time they're 30, people have had multiple jobs and moved about. And I guess for companies, one of the big parts there is that actually bringing in new people is actually challenging. You've got to train people. Well, first of all, you've got to recruit, and try and get the right person. You're competing with a very competitive landscape. So actually, the biggest thing you can do is actually retain staff.
I couldn't agree more. You're absolutely right. I think like the previous generation was a pragmatism thing. You got into a job and it wasn't that easy. Nowadays, one click on LinkedIn and you can apply for like 50 different jobs, and you can do it remotely. So the choice is there, which makes it, I guess, a bit of a buyer's market in a sense. And again, it comes back to that thing. You could either have a race to the bottom, which is you just have to pay the most, and you're just retaining people on the fact that you're paying them amazingly well. You're never going to really win that argument unless you're Google or Goldman Sachs. So if you're not Google or Amazon or Goldman Sachs, you have to look at other things. And I think it is mission, and it is making people feel welcomed, wanted, valued, and that you're doing something valuable and you're making a contribution. So. And absolutely, it's a huge cost to have to recruit and retrain people. So we invest. We have a head of people, and we really invest into every individual in the company. It's again, I think there's this intersection of being a decent human plus commercial sense. Like they really do intersect, and I think that really matters.
They do, and they don't have to be, mutually exclusive. I think some people think, right, to rise to the top, I've got to be this, really strict, brutal dictator type version of a boss, and really harsh, and get someone in, no, don't like them, fire them. Actually, that's not the way.
Those days have gone.
Completely gone.
They might have worked in the Industrial Revolution in a massive factory of 500 people on machines, and you needed that job, and you had no other choice. But I think it's terrible, man. I sometimes see it. I see like authoritarian or disciplinarian managers. I'm like, what are you doing? Like that is it's not healthy for the individuals because it creates a toxic workplace. It's really bad for your business. I take the opposite approach, but I think it really works. I end up having people working just as hard, if not harder, because they're enjoying it and they're feeling valued and they're contributing. That's a much more productive workplace in the 21st century.
Yeah, completely. I mean, whether you're the company owner or one of the leaders, or whether you're employed, we all still want a purpose. And whether you're employed, if you're working towards a purpose and everyone is clear what the goal is, actually that's as motivating as the paycheck. And again, I appreciate everyone needs to eat. We'd all love to earn more money for other things, but realistically, it's much better to be happy.
100%. And you made me think of respect as well, like that mutual respect. It doesn't matter what position the person is in, if they've got the right attitude. Like as a manager, respect is so important, and employee as well. Like just mutual respect is so key because that creates that positive workplace. I think our workplace is really great. I would hate to think of people who are in toxic workplaces. I know they exist. Unfortunately, I've not been in one for a long time, but if anyone is in them, life's too short. And I know that, like you said, you need to eat and there's a pragmatism, and I totally understand that, but there are other places out there, and it's worth looking into them.
Yeah, I think I don't know who originally said the saying. Maybe it was. I remember I saw Gary Vee saying about it. He was like, as a leader, actually, you're working for your team. It's not the other way around. You're working for them.
100%. I can't. Our COO is fantastic. He's got. You should get him on sometime. He's got all the quotes. But he calls himself. I think it's like servant leader or something like that. He's service. Yeah. It's like humility, and humility has actually been one of our cultural values as well, alongside meritocracy. All of this stuff really matters. We are serving each other. I'm sounding very socialist here, but like it is, we're serving the company, and that's our job and our role, and that's as good as we are. We're only as good as our people when running a company, unless you're a lone trader.
Daniel, I've absolutely loved our conversation today. I want to finish off. We've actually spoken a lot about business and growing a business. Actually, I want to ask you about someone who is in their early 20s and they're not sure what they should be doing. What would be your advice to them?
Sure. So I think, well, obviously work experience, which I've touched upon a lot. I do think there is, with technology, there is a great opportunity nowadays for people to learn for free. So there are great resources out there. I don't know if there's a website called edX, for example, where you can do online courses in a plethora of topics: psychology, cybersecurity, cloud computing, whatever you want it to be, and you can do it for free. I understand not everybody can pay for education, but there are great free resources out there, so you can self-train. You should also read voraciously. I know we've lost a little bit of the ability to read, and I have a 5 and 7-year-old sons, and I'm trying to encourage them to read as well. But like some of the brilliant people in my company, again, they don't have to be the brightest, but they read a lot, and you can cram yourself with knowledge. So I think work experience where you can, and self-study, self-learning, and attitude, as we've talked about quite a bit today.
Yeah. Fantastic. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and get your insights. And I mean, clearly we've had lots in common, which has helped that conversation flow, but it's been brilliant. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Enjoyed it as well, Matt, and really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.